How's it going? I thought today we would talk about how to practice vibrato. I feel like once you learn vibrato and you know kind of the basics of it, it's the progression of it that becomes difficult. Like, how do I get it faster? What are some things I need to know? Like, how do I practice it better? So we're gonna kind of just discuss all of that. If you're new here, I'm Corrie. I've been playing the violin for 30 years and teaching since I was 12, so a long time. So let's jump right into it. The first part of the video, I'd like to talk about how to practice vibrato. The second part of the video, we're gonna kind of talk a little bit more about troubleshooting. If you're having issues with like how to make it faster, if your violin is shaking as you're playing vibrato, just all those little things we're gonna talk about at the end, okay? So for right now, we're gonna start with how to practice vibrato. Now there are two ways to practice vibrato. The first way is you can practice your vibrato with a metronome, and then you can practice your vibrato by counting the wiggles just through your bow. I don't think either one is better or worse than the other one. I think the practicing with a metronome is a little bit more traditional. Some days I just don't feel like pulling on a metronome, so I'll practice it counting wiggles instead. So stay tuned for both of those. But right now we're gonna jump into how to practice vibrato. So the first way to practice vibrato, and honestly I think this is mostly the main way, like the best way to practice vibrato, is with a metronome. And I have my metronome here set at 60. Before I start, I do wrist vibrato. I love wrist vibrato. It's my favorite. If you do arm vibrato, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I am going to be focusing mostly on wrist vibrato techniques, but they honestly overlap in a lot of different places. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to leave a question in the comment. I'm happy to answer it. But kind of what I'm talking about right now, if I'm talking about specific things, it's going to be wrist vibrato. This beginning portion applies for both wrist and arm vibrato. So my metronome is set at 60, and we're gonna start by doing 1 wiggle, 2 wiggles, 4 wiggles, and 6 wiggles. And when you're counting those, make sure you're always counting the upstroke and not the downstroke. I start wrist vibrato with my wrist glued here, and I start on my second finger. My second finger is just, I feel like he's this finger I always start with. Three, 4, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, and then go. And then I go faster. So that's how to practice your vibrato with a metronome. Now, the other way to practice your vibrato is without a metronome. Now, I'm gonna say this is a little bit easier, I think, because you're not being bound by the metronome. So if you're newer to vibrato, this might be a little bit of an easier way to practice your vibrato, and that is just by counting wiggles per bow. So for instance, we're gonna do the same exact thing, but per bow, which is gonna make it a tiny bit slower and a little bit more progressive for you to be able to go at your own pace. Make sure that your vibrato is still even and it's still rhythmic, even though you're not using an actual metronome. So for instance, we're gonna do 1 wiggle per bow. Nice and slow. Do 4 bows. 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if you can do 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. And then do the same thing doing your fast vibrato and then the fastest vibrato. Remember, 4 bows, fast vibrato, and super fast. So you can do this with wrist vibrato or arm vibrato. It's kind of the same. Obviously it's a slight different technique, but you can still count your wiggles per bow or per beat. Okay, now that you know how to practice your vibrato, I want to talk about a few troubleshooting things. The first thing, if you notice your violin is shaking as you're trying to do vibrato, so I have you turned around. I'm going to show you my first tip, and that is, if you notice your violin is shaking, the best thing to do is to practice with your violin up against a wall, with your scroll up against a wall. Now, very, very gently place your scroll up against a wall, and you're holding it there with a decent amount of pressure, but you're obviously not pushing it into the wall. Very gently. You can even put a cloth there if you want to, just to protect your scroll a little bit more. That's totally fine. And now you can do those same exact exercises that we were just doing, but up against a wall. And it really helps to isolate your finger, and so you can very, very, you can be very, very specific about, what am I saying? You can be very specific about making sure that your vibrato is doing the correct thing, because now you're not worrying about everything else happening. You can actually really, really hone in. It isolates your hand a lot more. So if you're noticing that your violin is shaking as you're doing vibrato, just try gently placing it up against a wall and see if that helps. Another tip for if you notice your violin is shaking is making sure that your finger is actually your first finger here, which I call the anchor. He usually is touching the violin right there. Make sure that he is actually not when you do vibrato. There should be a space there, and the purpose for that is so that your finger can actually do vibrato. If your hand is sitting here and your anchor is on and you try and do vibrato, it will shake, because you actually physically cannot do vibrato while your finger is touching the fingerboard. Your finger has to come off no matter what. Doesn't matter what finger you're playing. It doesn't matter what finger you're playing. Your first finger has to come off the fingerboard. So for all of vibrato, your first finger comes off the fingerboard. So that's another really great tip. If you notice that your vibrato is shaking your entire violin, try that. And my last tip would be this. If you notice that you're very tight as you're trying to do your vibrato, loosen everything up. Try and make it the most relaxed movement. Vibrato is a relaxed movement. It is not a tense, tight movement. It should be very relaxed. So even from your jaw, making sure your jaw is nice and light on your violin, to your hand. I like to practice sometimes. Put my hand down, bring my hand up, and do vibrato. And see how loose you can make it. Hand down, hand up. Loose. Hand down, hand up. And very... seeing how relaxed and loose of a movement you can make it. The last thing I'll say is vibrato is more of a intermediate technique. If you're trying to learn vibrato and you're not actually ready to learn it, it can actually cause more harm than good. Get your basics set. Make sure your technique is beautiful. You know how to hold your violin. You can play a beautiful note on the violin. Make sure you can play some beautiful songs before you start learning vibrato. I generally say you should know how to play a G major scale. Just a 2-octave G major scale. If you can at least play that many notes, you're probably in a range that you're a little bit more ready to learn vibrato. Don't rush it, don't go too soon, because if you do, like I said, it can actually cause way more harm than good. I hope this helps with all of your vibrato practice. Good luck. If you have any more questions, let me know in the comments. I'm always trying to do videos that you guys want to see, so I'm more than happy to answer questions or even make a video about it. Also, like this video if it helps you, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, bye.